This is our 52-year-old 30-foot fiberglass sailboat called Mirrool. Mirrool is an Australian-made Clansman 30 sailboat with a traditional full keel and cutaway forefoot. Troy bought Mirrool in 2013 to explore Northern Australia, and I jumped on board in 2017 when we started filming our adventures around the continent. We spent the majority of last year giving Mirrool an extensive refit before sailing across the Great Australian Bight to finish the circumnavigation and return home to Western Australia. Last episode, we gave you a tour of Mirrool's rebuilt interior, and this week we'd like to show you some of the unique and highly functional features on deck.
Well, this is Mirrool's cockpit, and obviously we spend a lot of time here. In keeping with just pretty much sticking to what might be a little bit more unique and not going really in depth, you know, things that might be a little bit common on all boats, we'll just have a bit of a look around. So, self-tailing winches, they're not all that exciting, are they? But they weren't part of Mirrool's original gear, and for short-handed sailing, we just couldn't do without them. So they've been a really great upgrade, but they've been with us for about 4 years. We replaced our metal lifelines with Spectra. Okay, so a Dyneema inner core, a rose by any other name, but it's Dyneema inner core and then this braided outer to give it the UV protection. We found that this is really great. We haven't had any chafing. Some of the concern about chafing with Spectra lifelines is if you have old stanchions that have a hole in there that have been worked with wire rope, they can have a sharp edge. We got all new ones and we made sure that they were nice and smooth, so there hasn't been any issue with chafing, but they're incredibly smooth to sort of lean up against. Oftentimes when we're, if you look at some of our videos, you know, we might be jammed in place when we're really having a good look. These are so much nicer to hang on to. You get a thicker grip, so it's easy to actually get a grip on these things, which in an emergency might be important. They're really comfortable to lean against, and I've left them so there's just a little bit of give. So I haven't left them slack at all, but you know, there's just a little bit of give to them. The way that we secured them, I used these thimbles because it was a cheaper option than using low friction rings, but we've actually whipped it at both ends, and what that's meant is if I ever do see any little bit of chafe, I can adjust it at either end to just freshen the nip a little bit.
So a new addition to our cockpit was that I made these sheet bags in Tasmania. We actually made them from some fabric that I found out of the bin, so we upcycled. It's kept the cockpit nice and tidy now, especially when we bring a fish aboard. I can sort of shove all the ropes in there and lift it up and out of the way so we don't get blood and stuff like that on there. It also is really handy because we can keep our deck hose underneath there tidy, packed away. The deck hose fitting comes out through here. And a new thing that we've done with the deck hose is that we've put this fitting on there so we can get really good pressure and give the cockpit a good clean with salt water.
Quite a few boats to control their sail angle have tracks on the deck, and Mirrool used to have that as well, but we got rid of that and we've put a 4-to-1 system in with some low friction rings, and that changes the angle of our sheet, and we'll have a bit of a look at it. So while we're in the cockpit, it's back here, it's this rope. Look at this, this is a bag we bought, all right? Pasky made some fantastic bags, and all the stainless fittings that we used are wonderful, but look at this. No wonder you make stuff out of a bin rather than go and buy it. Look at that rust coming out of there. So the crux of the matter is we've got this line here and it goes through this cam lock, and then it leads off to this low friction ring as a turning block. This low friction ring, we also run our spinnaker lines through it, because when we're running a spinnaker then we don't use this line, so it doesn't really matter. The spinnaker sheets that we run through this, we also do that when we pole out our headsail, and we've just got hours and hours and hours, miles under poled out headsail. We do it a lot, so these things are important. They've taken lots of load so far, haven't seen any sign of failure there, so they've been pretty good. But anyway, with this, so we can pull on this rope and it goes that way, and it goes to a 4-to-1, and that's what controls the sheet angle. So we'll go up and have a look, because we don't run a track anymore. We got rid of the track because it was hard to adjust underway, the way it was set up, and it's a potential failure and point of deck leaks. Each little screw that goes through your deck, if it fails, it could leak, it could snap. This way we can make all of our own components at sea, far from a chandlery, because we can carry spares easily. So this line here is the one that was through those cam cleats. It's made fast at the bottom of this stanchion. I spliced a loop on, and now it's larks headed to the base there. And then it goes through a low friction ring here, and that's got another line spliced around it going that way. So here, this line is going back to that cam cleat. That's a 2-to-1, okay? And it can run, there's enough rope for it to run all of this length between both of these stanchions. So there's a 2-to-1. And then if we go and see where this leads to, we'll see where it becomes a 4-to-1. So by pulling on there, this comes through and it will pull down on that. And because we've got 2 ropes supporting it, that's a 2-to-1, there's a 2-to-1 back there, it's a 4-to-1. The reason we did it like that is because just with that little skinny rope, we have to be able to pull down against the force of the sail. In any case, when that pulls down like that, instead of pulling along the foot of the sail, then it pulls down along the back edge, the leech of the sail, and that makes it more full. So we can control the shape of the sail very easily, underway, whereas we couldn't do it before with the way our track was set up. There are some more sophisticated tracks that you can do it. Ours wasn't one of them. And look, there was just, there's just no space on this little Clansman. So this is pretty widespread on dinghy racing, so it sort of went on Mirrool pretty well, but you can definitely do that on larger boats. Our self-steering gear, it's of the servo pendulum type. If you want to know a bit more about that, just go and check it out, because it's beyond the scope of our video to explain it to people if they don't already know. But there's a lever at the back, if you like, that's operating these wires. There we go, look, you can move it back there, you can see. For that to translate in movement of the tiller, we've just got these lines, and I can put it in these little cam cleats here. This 6mm Dyneema, really strong, really abrasion resistant. By having that system, it means that depending on how we load up our sails and if we've left things a little bit unbalanced, we can actually bias the system a little bit, all right? So the wind vane might actually be starting at a different point. So pretty much infinite control anywhere in between. We can just bias our steering a little bit. You can tell we've been doing a fair bit of sailing because the varnish is starting to give out. We haven't got around to patching it up yet. That's not too unusual, but what is unusual is instead of using a block here, I just use low friction rings and a soft shackle. And so what happens is that just spins exactly like a pulley block, but it's a lot cheaper. And by using a soft shackle, I'm able to just undo that and take that out if I ever do need to replace it. The thing that makes that work is this bit of elastic in the middle. It means that there's constant tension on there, so these can't pop out. If it wasn't the case, it would be, you might have that happening where they can pop out of the ring, and then they're just Dyneema to Dyneema. That's never happened. In 1,500 miles now, it's been tested like this, and it works really well, and that's why it never ever comes off tension. So this is replicated at the back as well. It was we found that there was a bit of friction until I did this, and we haven't had any sort of wear and tear ever since. It was a cheaper option with gear that we had on hand, and we did it out in the field. So it was really good, and I'm really happy with it. Here's our self-steering gear. As you can see, it's still set up with the electronic brain. We did a video on how we set this up, and we found it very effective. That's why it's still sitting here. Every now and then, particularly when power consumption is an issue, we do put the vanes on. But if we think we're going to be doing a bit of motoring in low winds, when wind vanes don't really work that well, we'll hook up the electronic brain. It pretty much lives here now. When I did do it, we had a bamboo tube. That lasted about 3.5 years, but I've upgraded it to some HDPE, which will last forever now. It's been lashed to the back there. But anyway, if you want to know more about that, the video is in the description. Now we've got our solar panels up here, and I've put one down and I've left one up, and we can sort of have a look. Basically, really simple build. There's just a solar panel here that's secured to this stainless steel frame, and then the other ones are secured to it by these hinges. The way it's propped up in the air after it's been on these hinges are these very simple struts. Okay, so one is here that you can see it's holding it up, and when they're not in use, they just fold in and they just hide underneath the solar panel. Because the sun's over there at the moment, I've dropped this one down, so it's picking up the full exposure, the full insulation. This one as well, when we go sailing, we can see that it's just some wing nuts that keep it secured. Really simple. It was probably a cheap way to make it. I didn't make it, but we've left it like that just because it is so effective. And then this stainless frame was just made to suit, really. Down inside here, we've made this horrible, difficult to access, moist, mouldy space. Easy to access and not so mouldy anymore. We made these thermalite hatches. I made these with our friend Alan in Townsville years ago now. They're still going strong. I can't see any damage to them at all. So we use that pretty much for spare ropes and accessing our dive gear, but we can also just pop these hatches up and just lay it on the self-steering gear like this, and then airflow comes through the boat, and it's prevented mould growing up in our quarter berths and up in this lazarette section or the tiller flat really effectively. It's been great. We coated these with non-skid. They get stomped on a lot, so strong. Now another thing that we set up because we wanted to get ready for heavy weather sailing was we put running backstays in. They very, very rarely get used, but when we do use them, I've made it long enough so that they can be pulled and stowed forward, but how we actually use them when they're going to be holding our mast up, well, preventing too much bend anyway. I've just got, once again, some soft shackles back here, and this is a little bit of HDPE tube that I've glassed in, so it's like a frictionless hole, very, very similar to our normal backstays here that we put in, something a little bit different. And then I've just got a Ronston shock there. It acts just as a redirect. And then just on our lazy winch, because you don't have, when you're putting a running backstay in, it's essentially, you'll have all the sails on one side and you'll be using that winch over there, which means you'll have a lazy winch. So we can just put that on. Oops. We can put it on and we can just pull it by hand if we want. But if we can see a little bit of flexing happening in the mast, then it's neither here nor there, just to pop a little bit of extra tension on. The reason why we put this in is Clansmans are just a sloop, but we wanted to put in a inner forestay so we can run a heavy storm sail. We did use that coming across from Tasmania to mainland Australia, and we haven't used it since. But we do have some footage of when we did put it up, and we did use these running backstays, but we never did any footage of how the running backstays actually set up. And if you wanted to jibe, of course, you just have the other backstay but slack on the other side, because you can just pretty much have them here if you want. It's just easy to release it. And then the boom can knock it forward, and then you can sort it out once you're all underway again. These just get stowed against our aft lowers when they're not in use. This bit of Dyneema that we can see here is our inner forestay that we had made. When we were back in Tasmania, we detailed how we actually set this up. Just on the foredeck there's a little pad eye, very, very much like these, with a very strong backing underneath it. When we came across from Tasmania to the mainland, we actually had this in place and we were running our small storm sail on it, and it went quite well. So we've already showed that, but this is where it gets stowed. It gets stowed off to one side down here by this stanchion, so it's quite nicely out of the way. All of this other rigging here is sort of along the same idea. Low friction rings, using frapping in between to give it some purchase. Everything's pretty even. They've pretty much stopped needing adjustment. All of this is Dyneema except for our headsail. Our furler needed stainless steel wire. It wasn't enough to give chafe protection if we use Dyneema on the forestay. So our only bit of stainless rigging anymore is on the forestay. The rest of it here is Dyneema. This black stuff you see is just a braided, well, really it's just a braided sheath. It partly gives abrasion protection, but it just gives an extra bit of thickness to hang on to, and it looks smarter. The rest of the Dyneema up there is bare, and it's pretty much just exactly like this stuff. So it's been polyurethane coated. It's UV resistant, this stuff. When you look at Dyneema, if you can see that the outside is in good condition, you know that the inside is in pretty good condition as well. So all of this stuff is really, really easy to check. Every couple of months I've just gone up there and just had a quick look at it. I haven't seen any sign of wear and tear on it yet after 3,000 and a bit miles. One of the nice little bits has been that our lifelines can run straight through our shrouds, and that worked out really great. So that gives another strong point to stop you when you're doing all your work here. This is the main bits where you're going to be like flung overboard, and there's a lot here to stop you, so it's all pretty good. But we also have these Spectra jack lines as well that we can clip our harness onto. Really easy to remove if we want to. They don't tend to roll underfoot or anything like that. They stay nicely out of the way. We haven't had any problems with them. We always work on the high side, so if you're going to go overboard, you can't reach the other lifelines. A lot of the time when we're moving around in heavy weather, it's quite easy to move around like that. I've done a bit of work on boats up to 90 foot, sailing boats. I mean, I've worked on much larger power vessels, and they're an absolute nightmare to get around on deck because you've got these big broad open spaces. The nice thing about a 30 footer is you're never at a place where you can't lean against something or hold on or do something. I really have a strong feeling of safety when we're out in like heavy weather on this little boat. It was really strange. I've been on much bigger boats and felt more precarious. I think Mirrool's a really good heavy weather sailor. Here on the cabin top is where we do a lot of our sail changes, whether we're reefing or whatever. This line that's on here at the moment, it goes through this jammer and it says reef number 2. So just up here, if we want to drop off the main halyard, let it down, which is this blue line over here, we can do everything at the gooseneck while we're sitting on our bums, and we can handle the reefing here as well. I was trying to avoid using winches and jammers and things like that, but this really honestly was the easiest way. So if we want to put a reef in, we can set everything up, and then of course just by sitting on our backside use one of these winches. If we were going along and I wanted to hoist the halyard or pull in here on reef number 1, if we were on a starboard tack, I wouldn't necessarily want to be on the downward side. You know, I'd be closer to the water and risk going in. I like to stay on the high side, and what we found is just by using a winch as a turning block, we can still use the opposite side winch. It's been very straightforward. So we use these winches as the halyards for the headsail. There's another one there for the foresail. They can come back to these winches. Everything's got a jammer, and also we've putting our reefing lines here. We found that having the winches is really great when we're poled out and reefing. It's very, very hard to do it by hand. The only one that we can adjust just by hand is this particular one, and that's our out haul, and that's because we've put a 4-to-1 inside the boom, but we've covered that in our refit as well. This is our boom vang. Lots of boats have boom vangs, but with our one, what we've done is we've put this little quick release clip on the bottom of it. We use this for a lot of things. It does get used for a boom vang where we can go and attach it to the bottom of the mast there. But we also have, again, these soft shackles. These soft shackles are everywhere around the boat. By putting that here, I'll just slack that off a bit so I can actually do it. And by pulling it, we can have this 4-to-1 opposing the 4-to-1 back there in the cockpit, and that keeps our boom really rigid. That's important because we've got these awnings here, and in very, very hot sunny weather or very, very rainy weather, we want to be able to put them down. So we want to immobilise the boom, but we don't want the companionway hampered by our main sheet. So by having this here or being able to put it over there, we can use this to immobilise the boom really, really well. Also, by taking this off here and just undoing this soft shackle, soft shackles never need tools to undo. You can always undo them with the fingers. We can pull this off, and then we use this to drop our dinghy in the water as well.
This is our dinghy. It's a very big dinghy for such a small boat. We're often the smallest boat in the anchorage with the biggest dinghy. It's a 14-foot Porta Bote, and as you can see, it takes up quite a fair bit of space, I guess, on our deck, but considering the size of our boat, we do pretty well with it. We can keep all the seats and the oars inside it, and the way we attach it to the deck is that these stanchion bases here, they actually have little knees, and they're embedded into the deck with the backing plate underneath. So they're very solid, and then we use the knees there to put this ratchet strap through and ratchet it on, and it's secured here and at the back, and we find that it doesn't move like that. It's very stable and secure. If you're wondering about how we set up our dinghy, I've put some footage here. We hoist it using the spinnaker halyard on the mast and that 4-to-1 from the boom Vang. And then the seats hold the boat in shape, in rigidity with the transom, and then we just drop it into the water by releasing the block on the 4-to-1. The whole setup takes about 5 to 10 minutes with us working together. On the way here from Tasmania, we had some issues with water down flooding through the Windlass. But in Fremantle, I made a cover out of sunbrella material that I grabbed from the sailmakers in Fremantle, and that has really limited the amount of water that can come down when we're in rough weather. We don't have to pump locker very much anymore, which is really great because we were manning that quite a bit on the way over.
With Mirrool, when we did the refit, the old gel coat was pretty done. The coating they give it when they first manufacture it, and there were some painted areas as well. So we went around and we sanded everything back. We rebuilt things like hatches and all the rest of it. The products that we used were Yacht. We're not affiliated with them at all. It's just what we chose. So we went with a very, very tough hardtop ultra, which is a polyurethane paint. Yacht makes that. Before we did that, we put a high build primer on, which is an epoxy primer. It filled in a lot of gaps, covered up a lot of evils, and saved us a bit of work.
The non-skid on Mirrool, we went with 2 colours and 2 different types of paint. The grey that you can see around the boat, that is Kiwi Grip, which is an acrylic water-based paint. We just applied it with a notched spatula, and then we used a textured roller to finish it off. The original textured in the gel coat, we used Kiwi Grip over the top, but then there's some additional patches that were quite slippery with the hardtop ultra polyurethane paint that we used. So we added some additional textured paint on top of that. These are like the high traffic areas on the boat, along the sides here where we do sail changes and where we move around on deck, where I'm sitting right now, and in front of my feet here as well. So this white textured paint, it's a single part urethane that had compatible micro beads that we added to it and then rolled it on. And you've got quite a low profile but very effective non-skid in the spots that aren't grey.
Our sail bag, lazy jacks and canopy, we got that all done at the same time when we redid the boom. We've got this footage of the canopy set up. Now the really nice thing about it is that this canopy can be either set up with it all down, it all up, or just one side down, or either side. If you want free movement and lots of airflow on the non-sunny side, you can do that. It's quite easy. So the canopy is split into 2 bits and it's strapped to the side of the boom like that. It's a really great thing. It stays out of the way. It's really secure in any sort of weather. And something that it wasn't intended for, but it's sort of like a little added bonus, it's actually made quite a soft little pad on the side of the boom. So that's been pretty good. We raised the boom on Mirrool. She was actually down here before and it swept the cockpit quite badly. At the moment it looks like it's going to take my head off, but when we have the mainsail all set up and she's tensioned in, the boom actually clears my head when we're sailing, and particularly if I'm like this, as I often am, it can swing over. But at the moment it comes down just like this. We hold it off to one side, but we can run it over onto the canopy, and then to tension it, we lift the topping lift after everything's clipped on. That's why it looks like it's a little bit low at the moment. And we've been very happy getting rid of hardware like the stainless steel that was here. We got rid of that and we've just used Dyneema strops wherever we could, choked it on there. It's been just really, really great. It's taken a lot of weight out of the boat, and it's so easy to inspect. You know it's not just going to pop. Stainless steel is quite hard to inspect, but Dyneema, you can always quickly give it a really good visual. And you know, if it's a little bit sus about it, just replace it while you're out at sea. We don't have a stainless steel foundry, so got plenty of Dyneema, but.
Last but not least, we have our custom-made Dodger that we made in Tasmania last year out of foam, epoxy and fibreglass. We really love it. It's probably our favourite feature that we added to Mirrool. She did have a Dodger beforehand that we built out of plywood and fiberglass and epoxy, but it was definitely nowhere near as effective or as beautiful or as functional or aesthetically pleasing as this one. There's lots of elements that we like about it that the other one didn't have. There's a bit more of a curve to it, so it follows the contours of the coach top. We put a lip in. There's an ability to catch rainwater. We put new, really good quality polycarbonate plastic windows in, and everything has been fared really well. Even on the inside, there's nice thick fillets, so it's easy to clean, and everything, it's just got a real smooth finish. And we really love it. It gives us so much protection and shelter when we're out sailing. Because Mirrool's a small boat, she does plough into the waves a lot. She's got very low freeboard, so we do take a lot of waves over the front of the boat, and this just stops us getting wet when we're under the Dodger, and even in the cockpit. The amount of times we've stopped, our cameras haven't been covered with water, or we haven't been fully covered with water. It's just saved our bacon many times, so it's been a fantastic addition to the boat. Under our new custom Dodger, we have left it empty because our boat's so small. It's really easy to just go up and do all the sail changes and things you need to do up at the mast. Previously, our old Dodger, we ran everything back through it, and we had lots of winches and lots of ropes up here. It actually made things a little bit more awkward. We had to reef and things like that together because somebody had to be back here controlling the lines and somebody had to be up at the mast doing the sails. So the way that we've done it now, we can do it single-handedly, and it works really well for us, and it's really easy to keep it clean and tidy under here.
In addition to everything else that Pasky covered, the other great thing about this Dodger is even when it's windy and driving rain, we don't have to shut this all up. It gives us really great protection. Normally we'd have to put a drop board, shut the hatch, and really cut out some airflow in the boat, but very rarely, very rarely do we ever have to shut up the boat now that we've got this Dodger. We can leave all of this open, and also usually when the weather's bad, you've got wet weather gear to dry, and we can often, just using soft shackles and a bit of bar work, we can often hang out our wet weather gear or whatever we like to dry it off. So it's just been just such a good thing on this boat. We really love it.
Really hope you enjoyed that tour of the outside of Mirrool.
Yeah, it's been pretty well tested. So now obviously we've done our boat tour, we've done our circumnavigation. If you want to find out what we've got sort of planned for the rest of this year, check out the live chat that we just did. We pretty much covered it. Yep. Somewhere in there. But in other news, we have been getting lots of messages, everything short of death threats for a launch of our shirts, and as usual we do it for what, 3 weeks? Yep, we're running it there's 2 weeks left for the campaign. It's for the Elements t-shirts. Here's one we prepared earlier. This design, it's beautiful, we love it, we wear them all the time, and we hope you love yours too. Yeah, we've had a lot of good feedback. Is that, so we've got t-shirts and we got hoodies? We've got t-shirts, we've got hoodies, and we've got a new edition of V-neck t-shirts as well this campaign, because some of you are asking for that, and it's actually available now. The campaign's with Bonfire, the shirts are printed to order in the US, and then they're shipped worldwide. Yep. So yeah, get online, they're only available for 2 more weeks, and I've put the link in the description of the video, and I'll put it on screen right now. And thanks as always for watching, and please give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and tell your friends. See you next week. See you next week.